And that still remains a huge difference. I do believe that trying to find that work-life balance is really tricky and tough in the US.
Do you see yourself moving back to?
It's no joke. Like, if you leave them, they're going to walk you to the ground. I'm talking about corporations, universities, anything really. They would walk you to the ground. And that still remains a huge difference. I do believe that trying to find that work-life balance is really tricky and tough in the US, honestly. But yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective that you just brought up. I didn't realize that PhD programs, or what is considered more average for finishing PhD programs in England, is a lot shorter than the US. I just always
Mhm.
thought like, yeah, a PhD can take, several years. But yeah, I definitely also know people that are in PhD programs for 6, 7 years.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Mhm.
that is such a long time. But yeah, I guess it does speak to the culture within the US of
Yeah,
always working.
yeah.
Wow.
And so when I was finishing my master's, I had talked to the director of graduate studies and I was like, okay, I'm going to the US. I'm applying to universities. I'm going to, I'm considering doing a doctorate degree in the US. She did her doctorate degree in the US. And she told me that, oh, am I really sure that I want to do that? That she did not have a good experience. And so then I didn't understand what she meant. I was like, oh, well, goodbye, see you later. But trust me, by the time I got in, completely understood what she meant. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you finished your PhD. Thank God, praise the Lord, hallelujah, last year officially. And so talk a little bit about what you're doing now and then share a little bit about what your future plans are.
Yes. So, by the third year of my PhD program, and so for a department, it was usually the time, or it is usually the time when you write your like PhD candidacy exams, essentially, where you become a PhD candidate, and you have to like draft an entire grant, and have it defended. By the time I was done with that, I was like, no, this academia thing is not for me because it was the people don't even realize this. The professors don't even have time to do research. You understand me? Maybe when you start out, you could be doing research. By the time you get to a certain point, you don't even have the time. Why? Because aside the research, you have to apply for funding. Your lab and your research has to be funded. So a ton of the professor's time is spent on writing grants. Period. You know? So and I was like, okay, well, even if I was going to like establish my lab, I have to write grants for the rest of my, well, life essentially to keep this lab running, right? Because it has to be funded. And listen, for people that don't know, these are really competitive grants, competitive things. You have to write grants that have to be reviewed by the NIH. You have to compete amongst your peers and a very small percentage of these grants or research is being funded. And every cycle you have to write and just hope that it's funded. And this just goes on and on. I'm like, no, I don't want this for my life. And I'm like, okay, barely as a parent am I even, you know, if not like ethics and just maybe perseverance, it was hectic as a student. And I was like, I can't even continue this lifestyle because, the balance wasn't there. My family, I felt like they were not getting enough attention. And I'm like, I don't want this for myself. So I started looking at alternative careers in, sciences that I could do. And I joined this organization known as ACES, Alternative Career Exploration in the Sciences. That is what the acronym stands for. And I began to learn about diverse careers, that I could do with my PhD. But long story short, currently I work in pharmaceutical industry as a medical writer. And so a lot of what I do personally is to draft regulatory documents. So you know how clinical trials are conducted in the US or in the EU or in Canada? What I do is draft the regulatory documents that are submitted to the regulatory bodies that govern these trials. And so, for example, that could be like results. For me, particularly, I write for clinical trial disclosure and transparency. So it could be like NIH results, NIH registrations, UDRACT results. So this is for the for Europe, for EMA, European Medicines Agency, registrations, results, and all that. So I draft the regulatory documents that are submitted to these governing bodies in the US and in particular for me, the EU. And so I thoroughly enjoy my job. I work remotely. I love what I do. That just summarizes everything I want to say. It's really an interesting field. I write for oncology, I write for cardiovascular, endocrinology, immunology. I've written a couple of vaccine studies. Yes. So I write across diverse areas. And that really brings my PhD experience of being able to like read a paper like in journal club, pick out information. What are you talking about? What kind of design is this? The idea behind the statistical tests and hypothesis. I use all of that for my day-to-day work. You know, so and I write for phase 1 to phase 3. So for people that don't know, clinical trials are divided into different phases, and the how do I put it? From phase 1 to phase 3, phase 3 has the highest number of participants, for example. So I write for phase 1 to phase 3 studies. But yeah, that is what I do now. And just in terms of long term, I intend left for me, I would really want to continue and to grow more in this field. Hopefully, be a director someday. Help me, Lord. But I'm really committed to just, training younger medical writers. I'm an active participant in AMWA. AMWA is American Medical Writers Association. I go for the meetings. I go for the Southwest meetings. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. So I'm a huge, huge, huge participants of AMWA Southwest, the conferences and meetings, and it's something that I want to continue long term in a managerial position and just training younger medical writers and just having more and more diverse people get into the field because I never even knew that this sort of job existed prior to starting. So yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know about that job either until recently, just because right now I'm teaching for a college. So in applying to jobs, that's when I kind of saw that job pop up on different sites. I'm like, oh, I don't know what
Right.
that is. So I think that PhD has a lot of different routes that you can take, but sometimes it seems like, well, you're either going to do research or you're going to be a professor, but there's so many other options. So that's really cool that you're enjoying the option that you have now with medical writing. So you said this is something that you see yourself doing long term that you want to just kind of grow in. So can you talk a little bit more about what do you feel like your future plans are next 5 years, generally speaking? Where do you see yourself and your family?
Career wise or personal wise?
Both.
Okay, so of course, just like I said before, career-wise, I want to grow in that field. I really have a lot of passion for what I do. And again, when I was in my program, I loved my PhD, but I honestly wanted to be out of, just doing bench work. And so this medical writing field I have a lot of passion for it, and I want to see more and more, aspiring young medical writers in the field, and that would involve a lot of training, I want to see more diversity in the field. That is something I'm really committed to, and I just want to be in the position where I can, show that okay, because I got in, these are the number of people that I have helped, get into this field. And this is how we have made medical writing and regulatory documents management and submission better. Okay. So there's that part. And just in terms of my family, so I'm a young mom. I have 2 kids, 2 boys. So my family is still growing. At this point, I think I might have also one more as well, or two more. I don't know. I do love having like a big family. I come from a big family myself. But honestly, my kids gladden my heart. I just love children as a whole. You understand me? But all that to say, childcare in the US is really interesting. And for those of you that are listening that have kids, you know what I'm talking about. The cost of care, whether that is daycare or like nannies or like having a babysitter, it's expensive, period. There's no other way to say it. It's super expensive. And if you think about maternity leave, that is a whole other discussion. That is a whole other podcast, even. Though I'm really fortunate to have a company that has an excellent maternity leave policy for the US. They're really good with, supporting young mothers. I have things that I found also interesting about the US when I moved. So I can also talk about that.
What did you find interesting?
So I was just talking about the maternity leave, and it was really surprising because I mean the US always talks about like family values, you know, and all that, but you would literally listen to debates in Congress, and the arguments. Oh well, you choose to have a kid. Oh, I did it, so I did it without having any maternity leave. I went back to work straight from the hospital. So why do I need to, approve any kind of like general federal maternity leave for anybody, that sort of thing. And there are arguments of, okay, why do, and this is even among like to day people, like, oh, why do I have to pay for you to take off time to take care of your kid? And there's all this talk. You understand me? And when you think about it, you're having kids that are going to be future taxpayers, and they're going to pay for you to be to be an elderly person in the US, pay for your I think Medicaid or Medicare, I don't know what it is that is for the elderly, but stuff like that, pay for your social security. So they are future taxpayers. You understand me? There's no hiding the fact. So, but there's a lot of talk about family values, but it's not something that I really translated. And for a country that is so advanced, they have a high rate of like maternal suicide and just perinatal disorders like postpartum depression and just postpartum anxiety because you have to go back to work. Where and how would the bills be paid? Money and finances are a big issue. Your student loan, the debt, everything is still counting. Your car payments, your mortgage, everything is just like boom, 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 boom. So mothers are just pushed back into the workforce, head first, and just struggling to find their feet. And this is something that in Nigeria is not even something you realize is a thing because moms are supported. You have help from, actually you might even have too much help. you know you have family members that come over to help. They send like young nieces or young nephews to help out the new moms with like childcare. You have your mom that comes for something they call omugo, stays for 3 months to just help the new mom recover, and during that time they just cater to the soul of the baby and also the mother. So there's a lot of padding in African society for new mothers. And so that's why the rates of like postpartum depression, like PPD and anxiety, is very low. And Nigeria also has, apart from the maternity leave, when you go back to work eventually, you close by 12 in the afternoon or 1 maximum for most places. But of course, that is something that is very rare here. You are you straight from the hospital, nobody at home. You and your spouse, hopefully if you have a spouse, or if not, just yourself, you just take care of your kids or your kid, and it's just a lot to deal with. So there is that part, and things that I also found really interesting about the US when I first came, and I forgot to mention this, is like the price of things. And this is funny because I remember Lakota coffee downstairs in the medical building. I went to order like coffee, and they told me the price. And I didn't realize that they have a price before tax and a price after tax. And this is something that is going to sound like, why didn't you know this? Because in the UK, they tell you the price. That is the price. It's with everything, combined. And I was like, well, you just told me 250. How come is all of a sudden 285? And the girl was looking at me like I was nuts. Yeah, I didn't realize that that was something that, and maybe other people can attest to this, but that was something that took me by surprise, that the prices of things are not the final listed price. So that was one thing. And the communication style in the US also is different. And I'll give you an example. So this was during COVID. People don't talk directly in my experience. Like now, I remember I was in a medical building and I was attending a class, and there was a face mask, and the professor had said, Vivian, would you mind wearing a face mask? The way that person is phrased. That to me was a suggestion. Like yes or no were acceptable answers, right? But no, because that was an instruction that so there's a way they say it.
I've never thought of it like that. That doesn't make sense
Mm.
because I mean, it is a question, would you mind? And then you can say, yes, I
Oh,
do mind.
you mind,
So I'm not going to.
right? And I honestly thought that that was a yes or no question. But because, for example, like growing up for me back, Nigerians, they're good. That if that is an instruction or mandatory, they're gonna tell you you have to wear. Susan, you have to wear a mask, or take this mask and wear it. It's gonna be so direct. There is no confusion as to whether it's a choice. But in the US, I've noticed that people frame mandatory instructions as a choice. Still, like because I honestly was on I couldn't even understand. I was like, oh, is this a yes or no? Like, but of course, after a while, you just get used to it. Like, whenever people would suggest like things that are like choices, trust me, it's not a choice. It's almost like literally wear that damn mask. But they always make it seem so nice and polished. So mhm.
That's a really interesting perspective. Wow. And it's perspectives that I don't know, I can't really get just because I was born and raised and grew up here. I mean, I can get to
Right.
a little bit because I've talked about my family is from Nigeria. So there's little things I'm like, oh, I can kind of see, but it's
Hmm.
cool to come from someone who did not grow up here and then noticing things like that I'm like, I would
Hmm.
never think of that. So thanks for
Right.
pointing that out. That's so true.
The question would you mind always throws me off till today. Like I have to always like, oh my god, this is not a choice. It's not a suggestion. It is an instruction.
So I think I mean, it's still a choice, but it's also like if you choose to not do it, then it's kind of like they're looking at you like, why is she not listening? Like it's kind of you're forced into one way, but they're trying
Right.
to make it seem like you have a choice. So
Hmm.
that's interesting.
Yeah. And then something that I also found interesting moving to the US was just how much debt, by like debt, like DEBT, everyone was in. And I'm talking student loans, car payment, car notes, mortgage, like literally people are neck deep in debt. And this was something that I'll give you an example. It was really interesting because I have no debt. Like my parents paid for, and this is again back to Nigeria and the education system. Your parents pay for everything, right? Like nursery school, primary school, secondary school, college. Your parents pay everything. And so I had no debt. And that was why if I owed somebody like literally $5, I would feel so uncomfortable because it just felt like a huge debt was on my neck, like on my shoulders, like, oh my God, I have to pay $5. But then I had talked to people that later on in my PhD, they were like owing 500,000 for medical school. And I'm like, oh my God, how do you sleep at night? And how do you sleep at night? And they're like, oh, I sleep just fine. I just make monthly payments. And I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh, that's so bad, but it's so true.
Because to me, if I owe someone $5, I would be so restless to like pay. But I guess just growing up here, where you're used to like taking things on credit and just paying, like small amounts for like what years or even months, you just get used to it. But coming from a place where there is no credit, or there is almost no credit system, if you can't afford something, you cannot afford it. Period. There is no borrowing. Well, let me not say there's no borrowing, but it's not just a culture of the credit of credit the way it is in the US. So that was something that just like I felt like, oh my God, oh my goodness, like how are you guys resting? How are you sleeping? How are you functioning? But yeah. And then I think one more thing was politics. Okay, not to go deep, but oh my goodness. In, in Nigeria, people switch parties, like political parties. Today, I could be PDP, and these are political parties in Nigeria. Tomorrow, they could wake up and be APC. It was not that serious. Like, even the politicians switch parties in 2 weeks. Like, they're switching back and forth.
That wouldn't happen here.
It
It
doesn't
wouldn't
happen.
fly.
That's it, right? Because I noticed that the politics boils down to even the family values, boils down to even personal values. You understand? And I've seen where friendships end just because of like politics or political views or opinions that were posted on Facebook. You understand that sort of thing? Like I've seen friendships end. There's no friendship that has ended with regards to politics in Nigeria. Trust me, even among the politicians, like it's not that serious for us, right? And so I came and I would see like flags on cars and flags, huge, gigantic flags, and I'm like, what? And I was like, what is going on? But just, that, would I call it extreme patriotism? I don't know. But it was something that was really, because I don't even know which, apart from like political buildings, I don't think any house in Nigeria has a flag. Maybe they are, but I never saw 23 years that I lived there any house that has a like personal home that would have a Nigerian flag. That was so strange. But yeah, of course, that tons of flags everywhere here.
Yes, there is. People love America. Americans like to support America. So,
Yeah.
thanks for bringing that up.
hmm And
Things I have
these are
not
not,
thought about.
yeah, these are not good. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm just like observations that just really struck out to me or stood out to me, as an international or as a foreigner, just living in the US. So, yeah, and yeah, Susan, just let me know what else you need to know.
Yes, so I do want to ask just a couple more questions. Do you see yourself moving back to Nigeria?
Oh, I 100% see myself moving back to Nigeria. And when people talk about moving back, they're like, "Oh, when I'm 60 or 70 or about to even die, 90." You know, um I've always been pro Nigeria. I love my country. I do see myself moving back, especially with having kids. I want them to have a sense of identity, a strong root to their culture. I want them to have, just ethics and values that are like African oriented and Nigerian based. You understand me? So that is really important. And one thing, again, it doesn't help that there's the whole school shootings, unfortunately, here in the US, and you always have to worry about the safety of your kids. I don't know. I honestly don't know for parents that have lost their kids to school shootings, how they, how, oh my goodness, I'm almost feeling emotional because that is like a living nightmare, you know. That's just like, but not to go into that. But yeah, I would love to move back to Nigeria, and we are building a house. I told you, Susan, we're building a house, and the house is helpful because at least you have your place, a place you can call home. And so you're not just going to live in like hotels or like Airbnbs. Like I actually have a house, and so that is really an encouraging factor to move back. I remember when I schooled in Stella Maris, so that was my high school. You know, I had colleagues, like classmates, that were Americans with Nigerian parents that had their Nigerian parents bring them back to Nigeria for high school. Okay. And this is something I'm really pointing out because, for most people, and by no fault of theirs, they honestly cannot identify with Nigeria because one, they've never gone back, or two, probably they don't even have any friends that are living in Nigeria. So you're literally going to meet who? Nobody. You get me? So, but I know some of this, like Americans, even till today, they still reach out to us if they're coming back. Like, hey, are you in Nigeria? And I'm like, oh, of course. Like, I'm going to host you. Like, what do you need? And even the time they stayed in high school, these are formative years. They learn a lot of about like communication style, for example. Like I'm coming to the US as an adult, I didn't know the style, but if I came as a young teenager, I would have gotten the orientation of how to communicate, stuff like that. They learn the culture, the food even. Okay, so the food, they have us as friends. So I think this is very, like, this is really stood out to me as well, and I want my children to have that. um I want them to always know that they have a second option, and that not just that they have a second option, but they can identify and adapt and be able to switch. between both cultures at any point in time. You understand me? Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people on Instagram and even TikTok that were brought up in the US but spent some there's like considerable amount of time in Nigeria as well. So yeah, that's something I want for my kids as well, and just that orientation. And yeah, so that is something that we're currently working on, and honestly, within the next 5 to 6 years, we should be back by God's grace, of course.
Yeah, that's exciting. And we talked about this a little bit before, well, when we paused, but how, in my experience, and I guess your experience too, if you meet 10 Nigerians who move from Nigeria to the US, well, anywhere abroad, but let's just say US for schooling, and then they get a job, and you ask 10 of them, are you going to go back to live to Nigeria? Seven or eight are saying, no way, I'm never going back. So it is cool to just have a different perspective. You're saying that both you and your husband are definitely 100% going back.
Mhm. Oh yes, yes. And again, trust me, I completely understand. There are no wrong answers. Every family and every individual has a unique experience that might influence whether or not they want to go back to Nigeria. And honestly, I'm Nigerian. That is all valid. I, things are not easy. First of all, the economy. Let's even start from there. Within the last two presidents that we've had, it's been really crazy, and it's been really difficult for a lot of people. And two, the security issues are becoming more and more, of a concerning factor. And all that to say, I would consider myself really privileged, to be honest, because I have systems in place, or like my family, we have systems in place that enable my going back to be a smooth transition. You understand? So but yeah, I know that most times when you ask Nigerians, or for the most part, they were like, "Oh no, no, we'll just stay in the US and we'll just hustle." That's what they say. They'll just hustle. Like, but yeah, yeah, the kids especially make me want to go back even more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, just looking forward to just seeing how everything works out. I know everything is gonna work out how it's supposed to, and y'all are making those plans to go back eventually in the near
Mhm.
future. So it was really, I really just enjoyed our conversation and just kind of catching up and just hearing more of your perspectives. Some of these things about you I knew, but I learned some new things today, so that was really fun. So, what would you say, looking back, just in your experience of leaving Nigeria and then to the UK and then US and then having your family here, everything that you're doing now and future plans, what would you say that the big picture is?
So yes, even before talking about the big picture, I want to state this: traveling is a part of education. Your exposure and your mindset changes when you travel 100%. When you travel extensively, or you don't even have to travel extensively, whenever you travel, you almost always come back a changed person. Let me tell you this: whenever you travel and you go to a new place, experience a new culture, you talk to people, you get the true information that is not even shown on media. You know the people for who they really are. Do you understand me? You eat their food, you listen to their music, you hear their stories, and it gives you a new, insight into, what life is all about. For me, everybody should travel. Everybody should travel. I've met, even when I was in Missouri, I've met people that have not left the state of Missouri ever in their life. So I'm always a huge, 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 proponent for traveling. And I know it could be expensive. I was just fortunate that I had a scholarship that gave me the first boost. But honestly, even if it's like a different state, or even if, just anything, but really it opens your mindset. And let me tell you what it has done for me. It has enabled me to love people unconditionally. You know, if you tell me this group of people are bad, or they live in a or have a weird life, I'm not going to believe you. I'm going to see them for myself and get the first-hand experience. Chimamanda Adichie, the renowned Nigerian author, said something: the dangers of what? A single story. the dangers. There was a very popular speech she gave regarding the dangers of a single story, and how Africans have not been allowed to, write their stories and share their own, insights and perspective. When I was schooling in my high school, we had Italians, we had Americans, and let me tell you, till today, till I'm literally talking about, like, till this very minute, they have firsthand culture or knowledge of what African culture is, and they love and appreciate it. They eat the food, they listen to the music. Meanwhile, what you see on the media is, oh, Nigeria is this, or they live in mud house. No, no, all lies and all for an agenda, to be honest. But when you travel, you see things for yourself. You learn more about others. You love them unconditionally, and it truly helps you to have a heart of service. There is no team today that I would not blend into. I can strike conversations about anything. You know what? Traveling teaches you how to be humble. When I see people all proud, oh, this is the best, I live in the best place, oh, I am okay, I know you have not traveled far and wide, because traveling makes you to be really humble. You learn that there are no best places. There are only best. There are really no best places. There are only best experiences. You know. So because every place again has its good side and has its bad side, and as an adult, you decide for yourself what that place is going to be for you. So just in terms of the big picture, this is it for me. And I would never and have never regretted moving to any place. I have loved and I have a special place in my heart for each and every place that I have moved to. And I'm so grateful for those experiences.
Such a good answer. I really appreciate that. Just talking about how traveling is educational and really, really important, and how it seems like it's just shaped a lot of who you are and just the skills that you have with just intermingling with different types of people, which I think is important in life in general. And I've mentioned this before, but I think it helps us see God more, because it's like God created all these people and cultures, and when we're able to experience it, then we kind of see how big the world is, but also how big God is as well. And it's really easy to just be, if you're in one place and you haven't left that place, then it's easy
Mm-hmm.
to view the world as, oh, this is the world. The world is right in
Mm-hmm.
front of me. But it's
Yeah.
like the world is so much bigger than we have experienced. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Well, thanks for coming
Absolutely.
on and thanks for sharing. It's just been such a pleasure just catching up. And thank y'all for listening to today's episode. I hope that y'all learned so much and learned a lot and enjoyed it. So I will see y'all in the next episode.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, thank y'all for listening to part 2 of this episode. If you enjoyed today's episode and have been enjoying the previous episodes, please leave a rating or review below. Whatever listening platform that you use, Apple, Spotify, leaving a rating or review would be very helpful. Also, follow the Instagram page. Check out the website, thebigpicturepod.com, and I actually have some tumblers on there, so make sure to check that out. And then lastly, make sure to follow the podcast on whatever listening platform that you use. That would also be helpful as well. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode, and see y'all in the next episode.